Welcome to Your Place on the River, a podcast brought to you by Cherished of Woodstock, Georgia, in partnership with Chattahoochee Nature Center. Our mission is to connect people with nature. As a private nonprofit 501c3 organization, CNC thrives thanks to support of our members, the community, and listeners like you. Discover more about Chattahoochee Nature Center at chatnaturecenter.org. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Tweet us at CNC Nature using the hashtag YPOTR. And here's your host, Melissa Carter.
Hey, it's Melissa Carter. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And if you want to share this podcast, you can do so online, Chattahoochee Nature Center or Melissa Carter ATL. Those are our handles. You know, I was raised to give part of yourself in the service of others, right? So you've heard of tithing. I was raised in that environment, plus giving your time to volunteer for different things. And there's plenty of volunteer opportunities at the Chattahoochee Nature Center. Meryl Rivett is a wildlife volunteer there, and I found out that she has a special connection with wildlife. So, Meryl, I know that in my life, anytime I've volunteered my time for something, there is a reason, like there is a connection to that effort. And so I was curious, what brought you to the Chattahoochee Nature Center to be a volunteer? Is there a moment? Is there an interest?
There's a lot of interest. I'm
Okay.
an animal lover.
Mm-hmm.
Never had kids. We don't have kids, but I've always loved animals. I was a tiny tot. You know, I was one of those kids that brought home the guppies from the lake, of somebody's hamster that was an extra hamster, or my friend down the street had fancy rats, and I used to look after them when she went on vacation. So I've always been interested in animals. When I was working, I'm retired now, but when I was working, I had the opportunity to volunteer at Miami Metro Zoo.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for almost 10 years. My husband was very happy with that volunteering stint because I didn't bring anything home.
Right. Because how many times in your life have you heard, "Oh, Meryl"? I mean, like I'm just trying to when I think of you bringing home things like your parents and your husband, it's "Oh, Meryl."
Yeah, a lot of times. Yeah, a lot of times I've restrained myself. So I volunteered at the zoo, but then work got in the way.
Yeah.
I was able to volunteer before we moved out of Florida. I lived in South Florida in Homestead. A horse rescue opened very close to where I lived, so I was able to volunteer there for like the last 2 years that we lived in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Georgia, had the opportunity to transfer with my work to Georgia, which was great because my husband and I love to camp. We love the outdoors. We love hiking. So we were driving for 2 days to get to Georgia to do all that. And when the opportunity came to move to Atlanta, I took it so we can enjoy the outdoors.
Well, welcome to Atlanta.
Thank you.
Because I know it's been less than a decade that you've been here, right?
About 7 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So we're loving the change. And then when I retired, I said about 5 years ago, I said, I'm going to volunteer somewhere. I love cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I volunteered at the Humane Society for 2 years. And they sold the building that we were in Alpharetta.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to go to Midtown to continue that.
Because that's a new facility in Midtown.
Brand new,
right?
gorgeous, state of the art. But that drive was like driving to work for me.
Yeah.
And I had looked at the Nature Center a few years earlier, but I saw that the wildlife clinic was kind of backed up with volunteers. And that's where my heart was.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to apply again. So I applied to be a docent and a wildlife volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Got to speak to Catherine first about volunteering and was invited to start.
Nice.
So just loving.
I've got a funny story. I have a friend who's similar to you where she just, I mean, animals are her heart. And that's just, that's just her life. Same thing. She never had children, but it was just like my life is dedicated to animals. And she had been a docent at a different organization, and I didn't understand the word docent. And so when I was talking about my friend to other people, I said, "Oh, she spent 10 years in school to learn to be a docent." I mean, I thought docent, I don't know why because I think she had been a docent for 10 years, and I switched that around to say she had gone to school, she had to get a degree, and so that was not the case. So will you explain to people what a docent is and, how is that different than just being a regular volunteer?
A docent is a volunteer educator.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you know the facts about what you're talking about. So if you're describing an animal, you know about that animal and you can tell people about that animal.
Right.
I believe the difference in volunteering is you show up and someone tells you to cut the flowers down for them, or someone tells you to clean the animal pen. Whereas being a docent, you're describing what those animals are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's more training for sure.
It's definitely more training.
But you didn't go to school for 10 years to be a docent. My friend still laughs at me. I was in my 20s. So, I mean, no offense to people in their 20s, but I just took it upon myself to explain something I didn't know, where I would not have been a good docent because I was not educating people about the truth, right? I was,
right.
I was telling what I had just figured out in my own. I filled in the blanks with my own brain. And that's not the right thing to do. So talk to us about a typical day here at the Chattahoochee Nature Center as a volunteer.
So what I'm doing as a volunteer at the wildlife clinic is when I come in the morning, I'm usually there just half a day. When I come in the morning, I'll ask Catherine what if she needs any help first thing, because there's sometimes the hawks they need to be medicated. Those that are in isolation, those that have been brought in that were injured, they might need medication. So I'll assist handling those while they receive their medication. Then I'll find out if there's anything different on the grounds, because then I will go down to the Discovery Center and I'll clean in the back of, we call it the back of house, where the animals you see on the front, the snakes, the owls, the possums, see those from the front side. I'll be in the back. I'll be feeding them.
There's your documentary series, Back of House, and it's like a reality series of,
it could be.
Yeah, Chattahoochee Nature Center, just credit me for the creation of the documentary when you do it. Or the drama series. I'm thinking of like Netflix or something where it's, the drama of the people and who loves who and who. Oh, and by the way, they're taking care of the wildlife animals. But anyway, I digress. So you're in the back of house.
I'm feeding, cleaning, and looking at the animals to make sure they're healthy. They look okay. If there's anything that's different about them, to report that back.
Yeah.
Then I generally feed the aviaries. We have 7 aviaries out on the grounds, and that's with the hawks, the owls, the eagles. So I've got my basket of goodies, which might have fish, might have rats, mice, small chickens in there.
The things they naturally eat. So when people are like, oh, that sounds so mean, it's like, well, when you go to the grocery store and you're buying all these protein products in the chop house back there, you're not the one going to hunt your own animals. It is so funny how I think that we take that, those chicken thighs, and we're not actually thinking about the chicken that those thighs had come from, right?
That's
and so,
correct.
yes. So this is what they would naturally eat.
And I love bringing those baskets full of these breakfast
breakfast
out
breakfast
to the animals, because a lot of times I'll pass children, because we have a lot of children on the grounds from schools, and they'll look in the basket and go, ooh, or wow.
Yeah.
And then the parents always get involved, which is interesting, because you can stand there and explain to the child, well, that barn owl is going to eat, these are mice, that's what they eat, they'll find them in your yard. And then the parents come up, and the parents are either going to have a positive reaction and go, see, eat, or they go, ooh.
Right.
And then you watch the child take on what the parent does.
Meryl, I'm glad you brought that up. I am an older parent, so I'm in my 50s and my son is only 10. So I'm going to be like the coolest, best looking 63-year-old at his high school graduation, by the way. I calculated that. And so as an older parent, now I'm not criticizing any other parents, because that's the worst thing to do, right? Parents do not take criticism very kindly. But I try to be more aware of the fact that I am truly guiding him in his reaction to the world. I'm his first stop of how the world is. So either I can be that Debbie Downer and say the world is a dangerous place, or I can be somebody say, hey, look, bad things can happen, but more good things happen. And I try to be the latter. I try to be, look, and I'm blessed that he's tenderhearted, so he's very caring about, other people and nature and everything. But to your point, it's the parents need to understand that if you're at the Chattahoochee Nature Center, you're a parent who is aware of nature and loves nature and is wanting to protect nature. So you have to be a little more aware of, hey, if you're trying to teach your child, then maybe just kind of, it's hard sometimes to block your first reaction to things, but sometimes you need to, so that your child doesn't adopt it, right?
So interesting. The red-tailed hawks, those are some in their aviary. When I feed them, I know they're going to swoop down straight away and grab their rats.
Yeah.
And you see the people's different reactions. They'll wait. They'll say, oh, she's bringing food into them. And some parents will sit there and they'll go, now watch. You can see the hawk got the food. Other parents, just like you said, they're like, oh, let's keep going.
Yeah.
They don't want to be involved in it at all.
Right.
They think, my opinion, but they think they're exposing their child to nature, but then they have their own feelings about it, which see the child.
My mother, who's no longer with us, but she was, a huge role model and one of my closest friends as an adult. It's cool to be able to be friends with your parents if you get the opportunity. And she was very pragmatic. She was very like, things are the way they are and nature's the way it is and life's the way it is. And you have to accept that. And she always tells the story of my grandfather. I'm going to get the foliage wrong, but I'm just going to see if the story sticks. But he was, again, they were raised, in the farmlands of Kentucky, and he was on horseback one evening, and it was getting dark. And I think that maybe my grandfather, maybe my mother was with my grandfather, and they were on horseback, and they were going down this trail, and something glowed in the darkness and spooked, somebody that was on the trip. And my grandfather was the one that said, no, we're going to go back and we're going to see what that was. Yeah. And it was some kind of plant that was iridescent in the woods. And so it was him saying, look, this is nature. Like everything that, just because something seems off,
don't run away.
Don't run away and don't assume it's bad. Yeah. And so she had that attitude and brought that attitude with me, which I'm trying to bring to my son, which again, it's, I always talk about if you ever wonder how to handle a situation or what to do or how to solve a problem, you can always look to nature too, because nature takes care of its own if you pay enough attention to it. And so do you find that as a volunteer here at the Chattahoochee Nature Center that you see that every day?
I always see that. And I love to stand there after I've fed the birds or before I feed the birds or any of the animals and observe them. What do they do? What's natural to them? What comes natural?
Right.
So I've learned over the past almost a year now, like which birds are going to fly down, which hawks are going to fly and get the food straight away, which are going to leave the food. And then you also see what's the weather like, because that might determine if they're going to eat it or not eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So each day that I go in to feed, I'm always looking to see, did anybody leave? Is there leftover food from the day before? Because we record that.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to know how much we've given them and how much they eat, how much they leave.
Because if they reduce their eating, then you have to analyze that and make sure, again, it's natural for them to do that or something going wrong.
Yeah, Catherine will cut up the food, weighs everything based on each animal and how much they should be eating.
Yeah.
And then we bring back what they don't eat.
Now, Meryl, you have mentioned that you've loved animals your whole life. I do want to ask you later on your first pet. Think of that for a second, because I always love hearing those, because that usually is the catalyst for somebody being an animal lover or not, right?
Right.
But is there something that you have found specifically here at the Wildlife Center, something that you've learned that just was fascinating that you're like, I never understood that or knew that existed?
I love turtles.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things I really like or love are turtles. And to find out the different turtles and where they come from. So I didn't realize that some are just native to different areas of the country.
Yeah.
That some of the ones that people bring in here and give up, they don't belong here. They might have found them here. They might have bought them here, but they don't belong here. So looking at red-eared sliders or yellow sliders, that they come from Alabama. They don't come from Georgia.
Interesting.
So
I had told the story
in turtles.
I had told a story on another podcast actually with Catherine, and it was a red slider or that turtle we had rescued. I made the mistake of bringing it back with me, Meryl. I'm one of the people who did the wrong thing, but we found it in Florida, and then brought it to Georgia, and it's native to Alabama. So that's
fascinating to me that and then you could tell them apart, and then some of them interbreed, and I didn't realize that. So when people bring them in to they find them or they're injured, and Catherine explains to them that this turtle belongs in this place, and she'll show them maybe a healthy turtle that we already have that's waiting to go back out in the wild to explain the difference. So I think it's fascinating also that she's educating people that bring injured animals.
Yeah. Well, and I would assume, Meryl, you tell me if it's not native to this region, is there an issue when it comes to adapting to it, like the food and the environment, or
they all seem to thrive, but
Yeah.
they don't belong.
But then again, nature adapts, right?
Yeah, but you don't want them to interbreed. I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. Well, and it shows the human interjection into that process, right? We're the ones that have moved them from place to place.
Where I lived in Florida, in Homestead, I was about 4 miles from the entrance to the Everglades. And we spent a lot of time in the Everglades. We used to camp there, ride our bikes into the Everglades, and to see the difference in the last 20 years where it was filled with all kinds of animals. And there's nothing left there now because people have released their snakes in the wild. And the pythons and the boas have eaten all the native wildlife.
I've heard that too, where, there used to be the practice. I remember this as a kid. I don't, I'm sorry for all the fish that I have not allowed to live a long time. I don't know if I was a very good fish person. I'm more of a mammal pet owner. But to flush a fish down the toilet. Now, of course, we would do dead fish. And sorry for our young listeners because that was our funeral service in the toilet. But there are some people that do that with live fish they want to just get rid of. And that's also a terrible thing to do because you're releasing it into a system that it may not be native to. I mean, of course, of course, the septic tank is not but you know what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely.
And there was, and one more story, Meryl, that your conversation has popped up this memory where I lived in a home in Roswell here in Metro Atlanta, and they had run the pipe for the water up to my house underneath the driveway, and so there was a clog. And so, of course, we had to rip up the driveway in order. So please don't ever do that if you're building a house. But we had to rip up the driveway to figure this out. We assumed it was tree roots that was causing the issue, and that was part of it. But then further down the pipe, it's just a clog. So I called a plumber to come check it out. And he went to check it out, and I was at work, and he called me, and he said, well, you'll never believe what I found. He found an albino rat or an albino squirrel or some kind of mammal that was albino that had been born, I guess, in the pipe system or the underground system and somehow got caught up and had passed away, but had trapped the water at the base of my driveway. And even he was like, I think he was fascinated and sad and all the things at the same time because he's like, obviously this was not a natural state of affairs that happened on the roads in Roswell. But again, it's the... and I guess with the podcast series, I love that Chattahoochee Nature Center is trying to educate people on wildlife and how not to
do not release anything into what you think is the wild.
Right.
They either won't survive or they'll ruin the ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like you said, with the Everglades. So going back, Meryl, some people who are animal lovers, there's got to be one pet that comes to mind when I say your first pet, or it could be your favorite pet. But what is the special pet in your life?
Well, I have to say two pets.
Okay.
So the first pet was a parakeet named Chi-Chi.
Okay. Tell us about Chi-Chi.
My dad had a shoe store when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And Chi-Chi flew into the shoe store.
Okay.
So he brought it home. It had a band on its leg, so it wasn't a wild parakeet, a little blue parakeet. And we had him for about probably 5 years. And he had a cage, which he would go into only to eat. He had free reign in the house. He would sit on the dinner table while we ate dinner. And my grandmother taught him to talk.
I love it.
So he was my first pet. My parents weren't so much into dogs. They had two little girls and didn't have the time. Mm-hmm. So we always had cats. But then I think it was the first dog that I had with my husband. It was Golden Retriever. Oh, and
I had a special Goldie named Toby. He was my boy. And he's been gone for a long time, but boy, it's still, I feel like he could walk in this room today, right?
Right. Yeah. My husband always had cats. Parents always had Siamese cats. He's from England, and they always had Siamese cats for some reason. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm Siamese cats, but
somebody likes dogs better than cats, is what I understand.
Yes, but I convinced him we had to have a dog. Okay. Yeah, I convinced him it had to be a big dog.
Yeah.
So we got our first golden.
And what was your golden's name?
Hunter, and we never went back from it.
Oh, I love it.
It's been all dogs all the time. Mm-hmm. We had when we moved up here, we had two Dalmatians, and we lost both of them after a few years. And we went 3 weeks without a dog in our 40-year marriage. 3 years without a dog.
Well, that was tough.
And
that was a quiet house.
It was the worst 3 weeks. We're like, we're never going to talk to each other again.
Right.
So, yeah, so we got another dog.
I love it. Well, I mean, it just shows the passion for animals and wildlife and nature permeates not just your volunteer work, but your private life as well. And like I said, you're a docent, so you've been educated and wanted to be educated in a way to help other people. So when it comes to your specific docent education, what is the number one thing that you would like to convey in your specialty to people who are listening that may have been to the Chattahoochee Nature Center a couple times, maybe have not visited yet but plan to, and just who are more curious about how to help nature?
I think people have to get outside and have to observe. Don't think people are observant enough. So they'll look at an aviary and they might see one of the owls, and they don't stand there for more than 2 minutes. It was the same when I was a docent at the zoo. If they didn't see the animal or the animal wasn't moving, they would move on. So I think it's all about, to start off with, and with your children, it's all about observation. Watch the animal. Maybe do a little bit of research before you come out to the nature center. Just teach your child maybe 2 facts. That's all. Don't flood them with lots of information. Give them 2 facts that they can look for when they see the animal.
I know I've told the story before, but when I first brought my son to the Chattahoochee Nature Center when he was, about 3, I think he could have been younger than that, but it was the rocks. Like it was almost like I gave him kind of an overview of what it was going to be about and some of the animals he may see. But when he got here, it was the rocks, and he was like, in that he was obsessed with rocks. And so it's like, but great, that's your gateway to nature. That's fantastic.
I think that's absolutely true. I think what is your child interested in? Is it the flowers they see? Is it the animals? Is it the insects? So guide your child with what they're interested in, not what you're interested in.
Okay, and I'm going to flip this to the people who aren't connected to nature, but I'm hoping I have attracted them to this podcast. My son, I'll use, at some point he's going to be of the age to say, stop talking about me, Mom. But he's not there yet. But he, for some reason this season, he has been or developed a fear of yellow jackets and wasps. And he got stung once. And it's because, and I tried to explain this to him. I've only been stung once, and it's because I stepped on, I think it was a bee or a wasp, and the same happened to him. He happened to sit down, and there was a wasp underneath him, and it stung to get out. And so I was trying to explain to him, like, look, nobody hunted us down. It was we were the monsters that it was trying to escape from. But for some reason, the knowledge that these things can sting him, and I try to explain to him when he sees them, they're doing their job and they could care less about you, but he's still obsessed. So for people who, whether it's bees, whether it's birds, what will you say to people who almost have a little bit of a fear or intimidation of nature?
I'm afraid of wasps too, because I got stung earlier this year.
Oh no.
Yeah. I turned over.
Did the wasp hunt you down, Meryl, or did
they didn't hunt me down? I moved their nest unknowingly, so it was my fault. Right. I still don't like them.
Yeah.
But I think concentrate on what your child does like, and maybe spend a lot more time with what they're interested in or what they like, rather than what they don't like. Yeah. So I think if you start talking about what they don't like, then their fears, like you were saying, wasps are okay. Don't worry about wasps. Just move on to something else. Right. Look how beautiful the butterflies are. They're insects too. So I think just move on to something they would like.
And it goes back to our conversation about parents too, because again, I love my mother, God rest her soul, but she couldn't stand snakes. And it's all I knew about her. So when I came of age, I avoided snakes altogether. Now, would I love snakes? I don't know. I never gave myself a chance to experience snakes, but based on her fear, and it was so palatable. And I don't know what happened, why she hated snakes so much. But it kind of goes back to that, too, is as a parent, sometimes you have to be careful about passing fears on to your children as well.
I saw that a lot with snakes when I was at Metro Zoo. I worked a lot I was a docent in the children's zoo, and I used to walk around with the snakes. And you would see children running up to you, see the snake, and the parent behind them going, "Oh, don't get too close."
Right.
Don't get close. and then they'd stop in their tracks. If the parent wasn't around the first time, they'd come over and they would touch it. They would feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'd find their parent, go, look, I'm touching the snake.
Yeah.
But the first time, if the parent was there, that was it. They stopped in their tracks.
Lord, I could see my mother doing that, and without meaning to. But it's a good point. And that's the beauty of Chattahoochee Nature Center is the education, right? That's the dedication. Right. Not only, I mean, obviously they help animals and help nature, but the education for people, because with anything, the more you know about it, the less you're afraid of it. The more you understand how things work. I mean, just off a tangent for a second, I know in my personal life, I have had some medical issues. And so I've been around hospitals and been around machines, and they don't bother me a bit because I've been around them a lot. But people I know who have to go in for a procedure or go in for something for the first time is scared to death. And one of the things I say, well, concentrate on the machine they're using and see how it works. And then you think, oh, that's actually kind of cool that it does that. And then it takes your mind off of what, of the sphere of a hospital.
Yeah, learn more. Yeah,
exactly. More. Because it's really a cool place to be if so that's just something in another, part of our life, that the more you're educated, the better you feel about something. And with nature, with snakes, with insects, with birds, and so tell us about, the satisfaction maybe, or how it's made a difference in your life to work with the Chattahoochee Nature Center.
Everybody should give back somehow. And for me, giving back means spending my time here helping out. Satisfaction I get is knowing that maybe I've put a few hours in that a paid staff member doesn't have to do, or doesn't have time to do, or wouldn't be doing. So maybe I'm giving extra care to an animal that wouldn't be getting that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm holding the possum, so we're calming it down so it's going to be held so we can use it in programs.
Right.
So,
and that's another animal that doesn't get enough respect. I used to tell no, this is wrong. This is wrong, Meryl. But I used to tell the joke, why did the chicken cross? This is awful. Why did the chicken cross the road? To prove to the possum it can be done. Is the joke that I used to tell, which is so, I know, everybody here at the Chattahoochee Nature Center looking at me like, why did you just tell that joke? But that's an honest joke I used to tell as a kid because I'd always see the dead possums on the road. And now that I'm older and more educated about possums, it's like they are wonderful creatures that don't get enough respect.
They don't. They're so cute. People say they're ugly. They're not ugly. They're so cute.
No, and they're little, and the fact that they can sleep upside down.
No, they're
anyway. See, Meryl, I can tell you.
They're so cute.
But like you said, though, but you're volunteering your time, you're giving your efforts, and you have come back. Like you reached out to the Chattahoochee Nature Center. They didn't have the opportunity at the moment. You came back. They did. And it's just been something that obviously you enjoy. You wouldn't be on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I look forward to my day.
Meryl, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you can think of, maybe like a tip, a suggestion, or just how somebody who may in the first part of their life were not very nature oriented, but now, especially after COVID, I think for a lot of people are like, you know what, I'd like to kind of calm down, settle into something and be part of nature more.
Come out to the center, join, be a member, because then you're not limited on how much you can come out. Mm-hmm. It's really absolutely worth it to become a member out here. Bring your family out. Don't try and do everything at one time. Do one trail. Bring a picnic out, do another trail. Mm-hmm. You'll enjoy it. You'll see something different every day. There's always things going on. There's always activity.
Yeah, awesome. Meryl, thank you for your time.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you for volunteering with the center.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Place on the River, brought to you by Cherished of Woodstock, Georgia, in partnership with Chattahoochee Nature Center. Remember to like and subscribe to Your Place on the River wherever you get your podcast. Visit chatnaturecenter.org to stay updated on all happenings at the Nature Center.